Thank you, John. I'm very conscious that I'm all that stands between you, well, barring Chris, between you and a drink. So I hope I can keep your attention for a few minutes. I'm also somewhat nervous about not just having the audience here, but the people who are watching and twittering at the same time. Thankfully, unless you're suddenly going to change it, this is not like the experience that we had at the fringe meetings I was doing at the party conferences, where they had the live Twitter feed coming up on the screen behind the speaker. And at one point, a leading government minister, who should be nameless, the Twitter feed said, "Why doesn't he shut up?" behind his head. And he didn't shut up, he kept going. So I'd like to start by bringing you the direct experience of somebody with dementia, just to set the scene.
Beast in me is caged by frail and fragile bars.
A Christmas party, I believe.
Yes.
Pat worked for the same company as my mum, so I went along. Do I regret it? At times.
Yes.
We kept seeing each other. Pat's dad took a shine to me because he gave me Pat's car.
Yeah, because I didn't use it very often. I lived very near to where I worked, so I walked.
2 years later, Zoe was born. Is that right?
Yeah, 1976 she was born.
My dad died, what year? 1979.
A month before Ian was born. I mean, I didn't realise that it was anything, but he kept losing things, putting things in silly places. And I used to joke with him, "You're losing," and I said to him, "You're losing it." As the holiday went on, I was watching where he was putting everything because he couldn't find things. We would pick the remote control up, and he'd be looking at it as if to say, "Why do I want this?"
I was sent for scans, and then I got a call to see my consultant. And he said, "Mr. Wilson, you have got Alzheimer's disease." And at that moment, I broke down and cried. I cried with relief. I'd got an answer to what was slowly eating me apart. I call it the beast. The beast in me.
He just shouts at me and he can't find it.
So I hope that gives you a flavour of the life of somebody, and everybody, of course, is different, but I wanted to start with the story of somebody with Alzheimer's. And what I aim to do in the next few minutes is try to underwhelm you rather than overwhelm you, because the title here is Quality Through User-Centered Design Innovations. What I want to try and show is that the innovations that we need, I'll give one or two examples of great innovation, as it were, but most of the innovation is to do what we should be doing anyway. That film started by saying there's 700,000 people with dementia. That was made 3 years ago. There are now 750,000 people with dementia. It'll be over 1 million people by the end of this decade. 1 in 4 adults in hospital have dementia. 2/3 of our residents in care homes have dementia. 1 in 3 people over 65 die with dementia. So it's fairly staggering statistics. And as that film showed, there is a starting point which is about diagnosis. And at the moment, only 40% of people with dementia are diagnosed. Now, if you took that into something like cancer, I suspect there'd be a fairly enormous outcry if we found that only 40% of people with cancer were diagnosed and the others went on to die from their undiagnosed cancer. But that's what's happening with people with dementia. And one of the key problems there, and one of the innovations we need, is actually a change in the approach of professionals. I've had a couple of conversations during this year, one with a group of people that Steve Field brought together as part of the Future Forum Phase 1 discussions, which was looking at what could be done to change the way the health service worked. And we had a group of people which were from the GP community, so from the Royal College, from the BMA, from various other bodies, and it was about a dozen very senior people in a room, and I and Alistair Burns, the National Clinical Director for Dementia, sort of introduced the thing about dementia, and one of these people, who I won't name, but is a well-known leading GP, stood up and said, well, of course, I don't diagnose people because there's nothing that can be done, and all it does is worry them. Another leading person from the GP community said to me when we were at the party conferences sharing a platform, said, oh, well, actually people are diagnosed, it's just that the GPs don't record it because people don't like it to be recorded. Well, actually, we need to get rid of these myths. We actually need to deal with the fact that people aren't being diagnosed, and we need to recognise that dementia exists, because there's a whole programme of support and care. There are now drugs that are available, NICE approved drugs for early onset. There's the ability to get the support from people like the Alzheimer's Society. There's the ability to plan your life. And the number of examples of the difficulty of planning when you've already got dementia and you can't even, advanced dementia, and you can't even get a lasting power of attorney sorted out, is an enormous trauma. So innovation number one, to me, is to diagnose, which is hardly innovative, but we're not doing it. Another example of what you do with diagnosis is then provide information, and this is something that we developed with the RCN and is now used in many hospitals up and down the country. It's very simple innovation. This is a card which somebody fills in, has a photograph on the front of them, and on the inside of it, it's a 4-page A4 card. It talks about what they like, what they don't like, what they eat, what their medication is, and people take that with them into hospital, and it fits on the end of their bed. And it tells the team coming round, the people in the hospital, what is the position of this person. There's an enormous need for that basic level of knowledge and information so we can provide the right support to people in the right way. We also need to look at how we support people beyond the diagnosis. And in the National Dementia Strategy, there's the Dementia Advisor Service that's been developed. It provides quality information and signposting. It focuses on the individual and has been developed in consultation with the Alzheimer's Society and with our network of people with dementia and their carers. And it brings about collaborative working between health professionals and social care professionals. And it's all about accessibility. It's all about enabling people to feel that they can access services. At the moment, though, we only have 76 advisors working in 36 services across the country, largely funded initially out of Department of Health funding. That project's being evaluated, and the evaluation will be published early next year. But already in those 36 services, 6,500 people have been supported, people with dementia. So that's 13,000 with their immediate carer. We've signposted people to 3,500 services they wouldn't otherwise have contact with to provide support, and given out 60,000 pieces of information. It's a very low-cost intervention. It's the kind of preventative intervention that we're all too easily forgetting in the health and social care world. So my innovation number two is to actually provide some basic on-the-ground support to people who otherwise would be alone. Having Alzheimer's is devastating. Having Alzheimer's alone is even more devastating. And for the carer, it leads to enormous guilt and anxiety, and this can overcome it very easily. I then want to go on to just show you this, which illustrates the problem that people face. This is the web of care drawn by Barbara Poynton for her husband Malcolm, and it shows that what she has to negotiate in order to get what she needed. She's looked after her husband Malcolm for 16 years, and you can see all the different areas of support that she gets. And the maze of interrelationships. They don't all just relate directly to her, they relate to each other. And it takes quite a lot to get your head round. She could see this every day of her care and support for Malcolm. And as you'll see in the box, the white box on the left, she's got dementia advisory nurse. That is the dementia advisor role that she said was missing when she was looking after Malcolm, who died a couple of years ago. One example that illustrates that is she said at one point she was reassessed, or rather Malcolm was reassessed, and he moved from social care funding to NHS continuing care funding. They had a live-in carer who was costing around about £400 a week under social care funding. When they were reassessed for NHS continuing care funding, it came out at a cost of around about £1,600 per week, and they were told that that was too expensive, and therefore Malcolm had to go into a nursing home. And she was told she couldn't then have the social care support. He hadn't changed overnight, his condition hadn't changed, but our assessment system had changed. She fought back and managed to keep him at home, but most people wouldn't have. And we are spending a vast amount of money inappropriately. I think dementia is costing the country around £20 billion a year. And it's one of the only examples where the Q, I, P and P in QUIP actually do equal something other than cuts and savings. That actually we can spend less money more wisely to provide better care and support in dementia, and it will transform lives. And I think that diagram readily shows how difficult it is at the moment. There are, however, really good examples of great innovation as well as getting the basics right, and I just wanted to touch on a couple of them. Firstly, the Design Council have got a programme that they've been running through at the moment, which is putting designers together with the dementia community. And it's like two different worlds. I went to the launch meeting at the Design Council, and it was an exciting, really vibrant atmosphere where designers wanted to make a difference but just didn't know where to start. And we've got people together, people with dementia, designers, people who know about dementia, and we've got just over £250,000 of money on the table for developing new approaches. 16 projects have been shortlisted, and in the next couple of weeks before Christmas, the winners will be announced who will be sharing that £250,000. Just to give you three of the examples. Again, they're not sort of rocket science, but they're very exciting innovations. One is what's called a scent clock, which is something that gives off a smell which enhances people's desire to eat. Because one of the problems with dementia is you lose your sense of taste, and you therefore lose your ability to want to eat. Another one is dogs for dementia. Again, copying what's been used for deaf people, blind people, can easily be applied for people with dementia, helps them find their way back home, helps them to go out safely. You can see immediately the value of it. Another example is a computer-based travel experience. So you can actually give people the experience of going somewhere without actually leaving their own home. They're exciting ways that can bring the quality of life into everyday living. The next example I wanted to give you was the King's Fund's Enhancing Healing Environment programme. I mean, this again is so basic, you wouldn't even thought it was worth talking about. And the King's Fund have been great proponents of this and developing it over the years and increasingly battling to get the funding to do it, but achieving results and doing that because little things can make all the difference. As one presentation I went to where this was being talked to an audience, it was said, why do we paint everything in magnolia when coloured paint doesn't cost anymore? And it's a very good question. It's the basic issue about shiny floors. If you're travelling on a hot day and you see a mirage, you're glad it disappears before you land in it. But actually, for people with dementia, a shiny floor can be something that looks like water, and they can't cross it. So why do we have shiny hospital floors that are beautifully polished to make it impossible for people with dementia to move around? The other example is a meal where you have chicken, mashed potato and cauliflower on a white plate on a white table. And it is totally indistinguishable what is the food and what isn't the food. And if you're already not feeling particularly motivated to eat, why are you making it more difficult? Why don't we have coloured tables? Why don't we have coloured crockery that allow you to distinguish the food from the thing the food is on? Very simple changes that can transform the lives of people with dementia. The final example I want to give is on the Memory Services National Accreditation Programme. We have now got an increasing number of memory services around the country, and this is returning to something that is innovative in dementia care but shouldn't be. We have memory services which are good and bad and indifferent. There's a survey that's been conducted by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, a national audit of dementia services that will come out next month in December. And that shows that only a third of memory services have any form of accreditation. And so what we've been doing is working with services to assure and improve the quality of those memory services because accreditation can make everyone sure of what they're going to get. It gives people that guarantee to know what they're going to get when they come through the door in what is already a frightening and intimidating environment. And essential to this is people with first-hand experience having a key role to play in designing the accreditation programme and evaluating it. So I come back to a very simple, straightforward intervention, which is innovative for dementia. It's what we should be doing, but it's not what we're not doing. I wanted to just close with one quote, but before I do that, there's one area that I haven't covered, which I think is important, which is the Dementia Action Alliance. And I think that probably is looking to the future, but I just wanted to leave that with you. It was set up a year ago, and we've got the first annual meeting of the Dementia Action Alliance next week with the Secretary of State coming, and it's interesting that he's decided to come along because he doesn't get out often. except when he's on trains talking to the Today programme. What's interesting is that that's brought together 60 organisations now in an equal partnership to improve dementia care and support on the basis that no one can do it alone. And you have to pass a test to join. And we've actually turned people down. So each organisation that's in there, and the Royal Colleges are there, the Department of Health is there, the charities are there, the private sector providers are there, and increasingly we're moving outside the health and social care world to bring in commercial companies who can make a difference to people's lives. And you have to say, what are you going to do in your own organisation to improve the lives and the experience of people with dementia? And that gets evaluated and then monitored on a quarterly basis, and it's all transparent, so you can go to the website and see who isn't living up to their commitments. But it also enables joint initiatives, such as the work that's underway at the moment to reduce the use of antipsychotic drugs, where we know that we have 186,000 people on antipsychotic drugs, two-thirds of whom get no clinical benefit at all. And it's costing a fortune to deliver poor quality life, poor quality care. And it's only by a joint initiative across from the GPs, the pharmacists, the hospitals, the charities, the care homes, the domiciliary care providers all working together that we're going to actually get that reduction in the use of antipsychotics. So I think the Dementia Action Alliance is another example, and I'd like you to take that back with you, because what's beginning to happen in a fantastic bottom-up way is that around the country, regional Dementia Action Alliances are starting, with nobody actually pushing for them to happen. They're happening automatically because people involved nationally are saying, why don't we get something going locally? So it's a great example of innovation happening in a natural, responsive way. So let me just finish with this quote, because this really brings it back to innovation not being particularly threatening or challenging. It's about just thinking about how to do it. And this is somebody with dementia, her own experience of having to be innovative. So she says, I have great difficulty remembering things, working things out and interpreting things. I use a dictaphone, which helps considerably. I can't use a normal watch, so I've gone digital. But that has its limitations. I can't read very well, so I use audiobooks. I can't count money, but I haven't found a way around that yet, so any suggestions would be gratefully received. So I've developed strategies to help. These can be very simple but effective if they work. Often it's the simplest things that can get the better of us, things we have done all our lives without a problem. But now, because we can't do them, it's very frustrating. There was a woman I met a couple of weeks ago who's a GP, actually, in Bristol, called Jennifer. And she got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and it took 4 years for her to get diagnosed, and even as a GP. So come back to where I began about the problem of diagnosis. What was interesting was when I said, what's your life now like, Jennifer? This is a woman about 70 years old, and she said, I'm a fan of Facebook. And I thought, well, that's interesting, you know, somebody suddenly discovering Facebook. And she said, yes, because I can have a conversation with somebody, their photo is in front of me, I can have a history of the conversation, I can control when I do and don't talk to them. And suddenly you realise that something that wasn't developed for people with dementia has transformed her life and allowed her to participate. So I end where I began, saying innovation doesn't need to be the rocket science, great new thing. It's doing the things we should be doing, being imaginative about supporting people in everyday life. Thank you.